However, it's going to be critical that if I unmute, you control mute on your side. Right now, we can already get the background sound from someone. Marcy, if you can kind of identify who that is, and let's try to mute that person. So my goal is to have this as unmuted and engaged as possible, just to make sure that's working. Danny, are you available?
I am here. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Danny, you sound great, brother. Welcome to week number 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then let's see, Ryan Keeper, are you on the call and can you talk?
Getting some feedback, but I'm out here.
All right. So, folks, what might be happening is you may be calling in from your phone, but you are also engaged with GoToMeeting on your computer. So look at the audio button of the GoToWebinar control panel. There's a feature called Audio. And if you're called in, it should be, you should click phone call. So you don't have two different I don't know, speakers going at the same time, as you put it. So just a reminder to everyone, you know, I set the table last week with, you know, what are we doing here? What are the rules? You know, we're here to have a mastermind around the Insane Productivity Program. Everybody on this call has something in common. You're part of the Mortgage Coach community. You came to a call last week on the 3rd with Darren and myself. You signed up for Insane Productivity, and the goal is to take it to the next level. You want to improve. Hey, Pat, we're going to have to mute you. Marcy, if you can mute Pat. Again, folks, it's super important that you control your own mute. Once we've muted you, we'll try to unmute you one more time throughout the call, but if we have to mute you twice, you know, you'll have to raise your hand if we bring you back in. The rules of a great mastermind are participation is a must. I want to hear from as many folks on this call as possible. I'll even call on people throughout the call, so be ready to answer any questions. Be candid, you know, tell the truth, go deep. This is a trusted group. No one's judging you on here, and you're really here to go to the next level. Last week, we talked a lot about what is your personal why and what is your business why. You know, I came into this program, and I'm facilitating this mastermind with this goal of just, you know, improving how I control distractions in my life. You know, on a personal level, I'm addicted to messages, emails. Fires me up to communicate with people and build relationship. That's where I get energy. But how can I improve that? Everybody on the last week's call went around the room and shared their why. I'm not going to spend as much time on that today, just because we really want to get into it. I did post a question in our Facebook group around, have you finished session 1? So far, folks have not participated. So I assume most of you are part of this Facebook group. This would be a time to multitask and go in and let us know, have you completed Module 1? Myself, on this call, as the other co-facilitators, we have Coach Bill Hart. Bill Hart, welcome to the call, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Glad to be here.
Thanks for making time. We have Dave Gallegos. Dave, welcome to the call. Thanks for making it.
Thanks for having me.
And Coach Todd Bookspan. Coach, welcome to the call.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back on.
Right on. So, Coach, I'm going to hand it off to you in just a second to, you know, let's just say have the first discussion topic, try to drive some conversation with everyone around what's their takeaway so far. Again, reminder, folks, let's engage. Go to the Facebook private page and let us know if you have gone through the exercise of the Module 1, Week 1. Also, for the sake of just as much interaction as possible, feel free to use the chat in GoToWebinar. So, Todd, I'm going to hand it off to you. What's the, you know, what would you like to, you know, provide some leadership, you know, what topic would you like to start with, and what question do you have for everybody?
Well, you know, I think the big key is that, you know, we'll make the assumption, I think, that half the people on the call have completed Module 1 and maybe the other half of you haven't. So, you know, the goal certainly isn't to spoil what it's about, but I don't think that if we talk about, you know, sort of the subject of that module, it's going to actually have a negative on anyone who hasn't completed it yet. But, it, you know, ultimately it's all about distraction, and it's, you know, the big aha, you know, you kind of already talked about it, Dave. I mean, your goal is to, you know, to be more productive, right? I mean, it's obviously the name of the program, and not just productive and insane productivity, as Darren would be super enthusiastic about it. But I think the real key with it is going through it. Again, I mean, I don't know, did anyone on the call, especially if you guys are unmuted, did any of you actually watch that Microsoft video that Darren says, hey, pause here and go watch that video?
That was awesome.
Not
Right,
yet.
wasn't it? Yeah, so I would say that was like one of the biggest ahas for me of it. So, again, I'm not going to spoil what it was about, but in the end, I think the whole summary of it, right? Darren sends you at the end, right? You print out the book, the little, the guide that goes along with it. He has you do a digital assessment at the end, and I think that's going to be, the biggest challenge for all of you, all of us, right? Everyone is so busy. We kind of talked about last week that the action plan was to set aside, as Darren would call it, a jam session, right? Bill, Hart, and I call it time blocking, right? We're going to time block the time to be working on all of this. And so, I mean, the biggest key is that this module 1 is all about distractions. And so those are, the big takeaways are all around that. And I would say that if you haven't taken the time to literally put in your calendar for the next 90 days when it is you're going to actually spend time on insane productivity. Darren talked about it. We talked about it last week for those of you who were here, that you got to do it more than once, multiple, 3 to 5 plus times each week. You can breeze through it a little faster if you're reading through your notes the second, third, fourth time, but that's your opportunity. So, really in the end, I think the discussion that I'd love to hear from you guys is where are you distracted by? I mean, for me personally, if my phone has one of those little red circles anywhere with a number in it, whether it's a text message, whether it's my email, whether it's Snapchat now from my kids and my wife, and even maybe Coach Bill Hart, once I see that number, it's super hard for me not to actually touch on it and look at it, right? So when I went through Module 1, that was my biggest aha, was I had to be at peace with that circle with a number and not be magnetized to it every time it came on. So I don't know, Dave, the best way to get some feedback on people who went through that digital assessment, but I'd love some feedback from people on where have you found as a struggle, and maybe bring it up to the crew so we can get some insight of whatever else took away from that module.
Well, a number of you have filled out the poll. Danny, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what have been some of your biggest takeaways so far, and if you have done the digital assessment, anything you're willing to share with the group?
I think that video was a huge takeaway for me too. It really hit home. One of the things that it was kind of timely, because just last week I had pulled into the garage and I was still on my cell phone, talking with the client, and my 6-year-old son came out of the house and he was, at the window of my car, and I'm like, knocking and trying to get my attention, and I'm, in the middle of a conversation. I was thinking to myself, like, what am I doing right now? And I, as I was watching that video of the Microsoft commercial, I was, picturing that scene in my head with my son outside my car door window, and just hearing him say, seriously? Like, you finally come home after, all this time, and you're going to sit in the garage and talk on the phone? That's crazy.
So awareness, big takeaway, brother. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Ryan Kiefer, looks like you have at least completed week 1. Any takeaways, and then also anything you want to share from the digital assessment standpoint?
Similar to Danny, thought of a couple of times recently where I'm, sitting in the garage, same thing, trying to finish up phone calls. Because certainly don't want to carry that into the house, at the end of the day. But yeah, I took the survey at the end. I mean, I scored off the charts, and not in a good way as far as being a digital addict, I guess. So that's going to be an ongoing struggle here going forward, and changing my ways.
Yeah, right. So, folks, I do want to call on a few more of you, and be ready as I call you out to share anything that's a takeaway that you'd be valuable, would like to share with the group. But we're fortunate we have Coach Bill Hart on the call today as one of the facilitators. Bill has studied this, 1, as a fellow addict, and 2, as a life coach that helps folks take it to the next level. So, Coach, anything you want to share on a personal level, and anything that might be helpful to everybody on the call today?
No, this isn't a problem for me. You people all have issues. Yeah, man. Let me tell you where this hit me right between the eyes, and I just posted it in our group, Dave, and I see that on Facebook, and I see that you just liked it. It's a video I did in November. Tony and I, my wife Tony and I, were on Kauai for our 25th anniversary in November, and I recorded the video out on the beach there one day called No Mo FOMO, like no more fear of missing out, right? If you know that acronym, fear of missing out. And what I confess is that I realized, and sometimes you need that break, right? If you're on the beach in the Maldives, or if you're in Kauai, or what you're on a mountaintop somewhere, it's easy to have the perspective to be away from the things you guys just described that we all go through. But here was mine. Mine was, I'll be out running errands in my little town here, Moore Park in Southern California, and I found myself looking at my phone at red lights. And I just thought, okay, that's inane. I mean, that's an addiction. And it's real, right? There's a dopamine rush that happens there. So anyway, I think that, like any other addiction, right, you've got to start by admitting that you have a problem. So that was sort of my initial reaction around that. Dave, you have been such a great resource to me, and I tell people this all the time. This is not me just blowing smoke up your skirt right now. You have more great resources, whether they're apps or articles or thought leaders, and one of them that I really recommend you guys engage with is Brian Johnson. And Brian did a great recap with Cal Newport, and Cal Newport was talking about who I think is a Harvard professor, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Harvard.
May
yeah,
not be Harvard. I don't know. Somewhere back there. Ivy League.
Ivy League professor badass.
Exactly. And his deal is all about this very topic, and he calls it a digital sunset. He said there's something about having a digital sunset where he calls it shutdown complete. And so I do that around 6 p.m. most evenings. It's been a little more difficult with the Olympics because I want to stay connected and of course, be completely alerted to gold medals 3 hours before they happen here on the West Coast, but whatever. But yeah, most nights at 6 p.m., dude, I'm out. And it's important to my wife, Tony, and what I've learned in marriage, guys, is if it's important to her, it's important to me, right? So I would just recommend considering that, a digital sunset. Think about shutdown complete. When I've talked to clients about this, I know it makes you sweaty. Like, I get it. But I'll tell you the benefit, and then I'll back out of this, Dave. R.J. Crosby, years ago, told me that he said, here's my deal. When my tires hit my driveway, my phone goes off, and I walk inside, and I roll on the floor with my kids. So for all the things that, like Danny, that scene that you just described, and we've all had it, where you're just not connected, you're not present. Create boundaries, and I would ask you to write down these 3 words. People respect boundaries. But you have to create them. The only way they're respected is if you create them. So I would say, Dave, if there was a word around this for me, it would be boundaries.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to throw out another situation I think comes up all the time. I mean, it's, obviously when we're addicted to, our mobile devices, getting in the way of family time. Another struggle, and I don't know about anybody else on the call, but it's just, there's working on the business and there's working in the business. And, there's important projects that we need to get done. There's deep work that we need to do throughout the day. And so often we let busyness and alerts and messages and chitter chat get in the way of the big stuff, the deep work. One of the things I learned from Darren, he calls them jam sessions, is one of the best takeaways I ever got from Darren was just this concept that I'm going to schedule these, now he says 90-minute jam sessions. I've come to learn that, that's just, I do not have the concentration aptitude to do a 90-minute jam session. I am truly the real ADD guy. And if I could do a 20-minute or a 40-minute jam session, I'm pretty proud of myself. And for a long time, I would schedule 90-minute jam sessions and just constantly find reasons to interrupt myself. Now I schedule, 40-minute, 20-minute, just times to do deep work, project work, and get out of it.
Dave, there's brain science around 20 minutes. Like there's neuroscience around 20-minute segments. So I want to encourage you and everybody else. Darren is kind of an outlier in the world, right? We have a lot of those out there, and if he can pull it off, more power to him. But for most of us mere mortals, dude, 20-minute segments. Knock it out.
Yeah, you're right. I'm actually going to do more 20-minute because I find even when I do the 40 minutes, somewhere between the 20 and 30-minute mark, I am ready to go tackle a message or ready to go tackle something else. So, so folks, let's get some more folks engaged here. Dave Gallegos, we have you on the call. I know you've been through the program a number of times. I don't know if you're going through it, another time now. What would you like to share in the context of this topic?
Well, I am going through it again, and I went back because I think I shared. I went to the High Performance Summit, and this was before Darren did Insane Productivity, and we did this digital analysis there. Then I continue to improve, but the reason I'm going to go through it again, this will be the 4th time through Insane Productivity, is because there's still things in here. I took the assessment again, and there's still things in here I'm still not doing, and so it's about mastery. I mean, that's what I would teach. I love the idea, Bill, of a digital sunset. That's a great way to put that. Because we're all guilty of it. The biggest one I had was that I took away from it was the idea of how unproductive you would get if while you were texting or talking on your phone while you were driving you had an accident. Not to mention all the horrific things that could be involved with an accident. So, because it could get way worse than just getting in a car accident and having a fender bend or whatever. So, to me, that was the big wake-up call when I think I did High Performance Summit. So, you're right. This phone thing has become really challenging for so many people. And one of the things that I go back to, we teach this. Todd Duncan Todd Duncan got me on the path of not being addicted to things digitally when I went to Loan Officer Productivity School back in 2000, and he had me. At the time I had a cell phone and a pager and all these ways that people could get in touch with me, and he had me throw my pager to him, and he didn't catch it, and it flew across the floor, and he turned around and he said, "Hey, you don't need that." And
you were the guy. I've heard this story. I didn't know it was you.
I know. I tell that story and people go, "I was there when that happened." We've taught our guys, and what we do here is that we don't. My guys don't have their cell phones on their business cards because we teach the idea of have one location people can get a hold of you, and then that's where people get a hold of you. And putting those boundaries on there, it's such a powerful concept because it's like just call me at the office. So I'm not a. I actually grade out pretty well on the digital addictions because I've just never. And maybe it's my age. I'm 56 years old, so maybe that's part of it. That I don't have that. I'm not as. I score pretty low. I get like an 11 or a 12 on this. But the items that I still have, those are the things that I have to keep working on to improve on it. And that's what I would tell everybody is just know that, you got it. And that's why I'm going to go through it again because I feel like the highest level of productivity that I could reach would be mastering all of it. And so that's why I keep going through it. As far as jam sessions go, Dave, I can do 90 minutes. I can't do 90 minutes 3 times a day like Darren suggests that he does. But when you do the math, that's 4.5 hours out of an 8-hour day. And it's not that, when you think about it in those terms, like, oh yeah, it is only 4.5 hours. So just do one. Just get that 90. Mine's first thing in the morning. I have a whole morning routine. Mine's first thing in the morning before I come to the office. And it's unbelievable how productive you can be when you've just said, I'm not doing anything but this for 90 minutes. And it's really challenging for me, ADD guy. I almost need to like tie myself to my chair sometimes just so I don't get up and walk away because, distraction. So there you go. Yeah, I'm going through it again. And because I want to get down to the 0 to 5 clean as a whistle.
Love it, love it. So folks, Coach Todd Bookspan has been posting some notes and takeaways in the chat of the Go to Webinar Control Panel, so make note of that. I also just threw up a couple reminders during the call. Todd and I will clean these up at the end of the call. We'll just have one post of takeaways and reminders from today's session, but I just thought I would get them down while they were fresh in my head. For those of you that filled out the post, the poll in our Facebook page, great job. For those that are interacting, it looks like a number of you have gone through the digital assessment, and there's a bit of a conversation taking place. Great job to you. I do want to make sure we acknowledge, and I don't know if Troy, are you on the call and unmuted?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, so Troy, I mean, kudos and high five. You know, you were the first one, it looks like, to go through Module 1, and you posted some of your thoughts and takeaways. Anything else you'd like to add on that since this post on August 8th?
Well, since then, I actually have turned off all my notifications on my cell phone. So that which was huge for me because I like you, Dave. Every time my phone would go off, my watch would go off, and I would stop whatever I'm doing, even if it's from a client. I have to see who's emailing me or texting me. And it's actually made me more attentive and more aware of how distracted I really was across the board. At the same time, at home, even with my family, I was actually enjoying my family time and being able to put the office away and not be really tied and worried as much, and actually a lot calmer over the last couple of days.
Love it, brother. So great job on taking action, and great job on the transparency and just, you know, participating in the community.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody on the call have a question for Troy? You know, I mean, someone on the call might have heard what he said and go, well, how do you turn off your alerts on your phone? The beautiful thing about Masterminds is like, hey, we're here to be real, we're here to get better, and we're here to take action. So does anybody have a question for Troy?
Hey, Dave, I have a comment.
Bring it.
One of the things I did a little bit ago that's helped me, being an email junkie probably more than anything, is, you know, you can go into your settings. I know at least on my phone, I'm sure, you know, Droids would say, you change your settings in your email to only give you new emails when you open the app versus pushing those out to you, so you're not constantly listening for the ding or looking down at your mail folder to see if it's, you know, there's a little red with a number there. You know, only, you know, when you go into the app, is it going to retrieve new email. It helps save your battery too.
Love it. Great idea. That was Ryan, right?
You know, Dave, what Ryan just said, and you know, the whole idea of turning off your notifications. This is Bill. I often tell clients who are feeling out of control, overwhelmed, overly reactive, three words. I'm big on 3 words, I guess. I see a pattern here. But I ask them to write down 3 words: on my terms. And I think that's what this conversation really is about, is whether you structure expectations on business cards and email signatures, or, you know, you're setting up these boundaries. It really does have to be on your terms. Now, you know, you can go too far with that, right? You can become obnoxious where you're so sequestered that, you know, your own team doesn't know what you're doing. So I'm not talking about that kind of craziness, but I would just say to you guys, those of you that are on this call, you're here because you think higher, you shoot higher, you aspire to do and be more. And so the more we can separate ourselves from that kind of, you know, 2000s, 1990s prototype of the mortgage professional that was always available, right, the better. So 3 words: on my terms.
Well, and the thing I would throw in there behind that is that, you know, it's the fear, right? You know, I know as an originator, I had a fear if I wasn't Johnny on the spot, answering my phone, returning a text, returning an email, that I was going to lose business. But, you know, I guess, Troy, since you made that change, have you lost any deals, or has anyone gotten angry at you?
Actually, no one has. Actually, noticed on the service side, no one's really noticed that what I've done. It's like, instead of replying within 30 seconds, I reply maybe an hour later, and I still get the same response: hey, thank you.
You know, isn't that funny, right? So I had that same fear, and I had that same aha, right? So that biggest thing is the thing that we're afraid of really doesn't come to play. And in the end, you know, I made the decision that if someone did get mad at me because I wasn't, you know, like, going to text at 9 p.m. or, you know, whenever it was, that they probably weren't a good match to do business with me anyway. But in the end, it didn't ever happen. I mean, people still were appreciative of what I did and when I did it. So that's something I would consider you guys all to listen to what Troy just said. That's a huge takeaway.
This is Danny. I I actually struggle with this idea a lot because I still am the one replying to emails and text messages at 10 o'clock at night and both weekend days. And I've been actively trying to become aware of it and conscious of what I'm doing. But at the same time, I mean, most of the people who are on this call in the mortgage industry are doing it to help families. And those families have major real stress points, whether they imagine them or not. For them, they're very real. And for me to be able to respond to them on the weekend or in the evening before they go to bed with that stress, you know, I find that really validating. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. You know, it's still painful to have to do that, and I know there's a cost to it, but it's really hard for me to disconnect the value that I get from helping that family in those times of stress and just think, oh, I'll just respond to them on Monday. Well, by Monday, you know, they've gone 48 hours freaking out unnecessarily when I could have helped them.
No, and I totally get that too, right? For me, it was turned into setting the expectations so I didn't feel like I let people down. You know, number one is I initially I made blocks of time on the weekend where I could respond to people, and that way I didn't feel like I was letting people down. But I set those, you know, those blocks, and you know, they were typically just no more than 15 minutes. I didn't really need that. But then I just set the expectations of, you know what, this is when I'm going to be available. It goes kind of back to what Dave said, right? When he created this is how you reach me, and when you reach me, then people will reach out to you. And so, you know, it's certainly a personal choice. I don't think if it's, you know, if you get enjoyment out of it, certainly, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. If it's not impacting, you know, those around you, I think that, you know, I guess, Bill, what would you say, Bill, to that?
Yeah, Danny, I hear you, man, and I thank you for saying that, because I think that's something that everybody can relate to. And you know, what I would just ask you to consider is there's a psychological, there's something that happens, I think, when we're in a service business like that, where, again, I think it's a dopamine rush, where it's like, it's the savior syndrome, or whatever you want to call it. It's like, dude, I was there. I helped them. They needed me. I was there for them. And I just think you have to weigh that against at what cost, right? So if you're doing that and there's a repeated pattern with your family, them feeling you're not connected, or dad's disconnected again, he's on his phone, or your wife rolling her eyes, whatever that might be, I think you've just got to weigh that out, and that's a very personal decision, like Todd said. I would suggest to you, and I learned this years ago from Valerie Fitzgerald. She was like my #3 realtor interview 20 years ago. She was a former Eileen Ford model in Beverly Hills. She dropped dead gorgeous, had done $50 million in volume, which I quickly realized was 5 $10 million houses that she sold, so it wasn't that great an interview. But she did tell me at the time, she said, look, here's what I figured out. She's the one that taught me about the boundaries. She said people respect boundaries. She said, I could take these calls at 8 o'clock at night, but like Bookspan just said, you know, at the end of the day, if I've got somebody that's that demanding, in the case of a realtor, let's not talk about a borrower that's, you know, in a nightmare scenario. I probably don't want them in my life. But with the borrower, if you set expectations, like I had a heart attack last year. The idea of me calling and actually talking to my cardiologist is not going to happen. I'm not going to talk to my cardiologist. I'm going to talk to somebody else. So all I would ask you to consider is, are there systems that you could set up? Are there expectations that you could deploy? Is there somebody else on your team that you could make available who does sort of the triage, right, by phone before it escalates to you? 90% of that stuff could probably be addressed by somebody else. Just something to consider.
That's really good.
Great
I
advice.
appreciate it, guys.
Anybody else have those same fears or concerns that's willing to speak up about them?
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Steve. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, so one of the things that I implemented a couple of years ago, because I found myself just buried on the weekends responding, you know, pulling me away from my personal time, was I just implemented every Thursday to make outbound calls to my realtors, to my clients that were in process, and really have an in-depth conversation with them. And that could be a 3-minute to 15-minute conversation, and then allow them, everybody in the transactions, to actually enjoy their weekends and not be. And ever since I've done that, my phone calls have almost gone away on the weekends, because I make these outbound calls and I spend 3 to 4 hours on that Thursday doing that. And that's something that's helped me tremendously with my work balance and life balance time.
Great strategy.
Yeah, I agree. That's that's pretty huge. Does anyone else do anything similar to that in their businesses?
This is Dave. I just, one of the things that's exactly the point is that when so customer service and follow-up and communication is such an important part of our business, and what we've tried to teach is that you've got to have you have to be proactive with your follow-up and communication, but that doesn't mean that you have to. So if you get a new lead, so you get a phone call at 4:15 or 4:30 and 4:45, 5 o'clock, and you want to leave by 5:30. That doesn't mean that you have to stop and start an entire new loan process. What it does mean, and to me, excellent customer service is acknowledgement and scheduling and that type of thing. So picking up the phone and calling the customer going, hey, I got your message, thank you, I appreciate it. I have an appointment that I have to attend, and everybody can have an appointment. My son has a soccer game. It doesn't matter what it is. You have an appointment. Most people understand that and they appreciate it and just say, can we schedule time at, and then just fill in the blank. That's always such an effective way, and most people just love the fact that you acknowledged it. And I think that can go a long way towards you then setting those boundaries and controlling your time, and instead of, because it is a reactive business, especially when you first start, you don't want to miss any opportunity. So the phone rang, I got to answer it. Well, you only have to answer it because you think you have to answer it. If you were in an appointment, you couldn't answer the phone. So it's the same concept, and have found that to be a really effective way, just setting the expectation, acknowledging opportunities, and so you don't feel like you're going to give poor service, because that's what people hate. People just hate not hearing from you. They don't hate you getting back to them and telling them when you're going to respond. So just another thought.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Mr. Savage, do you want to call on anyone else, or do you just want us to keep the open dialogue going?
Well, first of all, great job, everyone. It's always a beautiful thing when everybody talks, everybody shares. Great job to those of you that are posting questions. There's no doubt, common theme that we all struggle with that gets in the way of our productivity and being our best authentic self is just addiction to busyness. And there's a big difference between busyness and business. And so I think it's great that we're kicking off with this. I think it's awesome that Darren attacked that at the very beginning of this training session. There's not a lot of programs out there that really address getting focused, getting away from distractions, and working on business like this. So I think it's a great topic. One takeaway for me, because I'm not serving families, and Danny, to your point, responding to messages in evenings and weekends, it's important to me, whether it gives me energy and fuel, whether it gives me peace of mind. One of the takeaways I just took down for myself hearing the conversation, hearing what you said, Danny, is, those 20-minute jam sessions that I schedule during the day, 20 to 40-minute jam sessions that I schedule, that I'm now going to make 20 minutes. I'm going to just start scheduling, jam sessions around going into my inbox and being responsive in evenings, and probably do it as late as possible so it gets, doesn't get in the way of family time. Try to do it on weekends as early and late as possible so that it's time where it's not getting in the way of my engagement as a dad and husband. So that's a takeaway I had. Hey, one person I'd love to hear from, we've got Kristin Messerli, our millennial representative. For those of you that don't know Kristin, she's a speaker in the mortgage space. I met her at the MBA event a couple years ago, speaking on, how we as an industry could do a better job of serving the millennial marketplace. And also, she was talking a lot about the Hispanic marketplace. Kristin, what's your take on this as a millennial? And Kristin, you may be muted on your end. Maybe. There you are.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I may have bad service. But yeah, this has been interesting for me. I think I don't realize how much technology is wrapped up in my life, and I think for many millennials, we've just grown up with this kind of access to communication and technology, so it's something that, you don't really think about taking a break from, but I have started to take breaks and start noticing, some of the, I don't know, someone talked about setting boundaries, and while it feels, I think maybe it feels this way for everyone, but I think that that actually placing that space in your life can feel a little bit haunting in a way. So it's been interesting for me, but I do think I get a lot of questions from loan officers that millennials, they always want a quick response, and so you have to always be on call. But I do think that that everyone does respect boundaries, and that's a good thing as long as you set those expectations up front and do have some kind of access, like once a day or something like that, that you can still be very effective with the millennial generation as well.
So you brought up a good point, because I've come to this, at least my own personal conclusion, is that if you design your mortgage practice, the way you market, the way you communicate for millennials, you're really designing it for everybody, because we all live on mobile devices. And for the most part, what millennials like, so do 54-year-olds. Maybe the 54-year-old can't text as fast, isn't as agile with a mobile device as a millennial, but they like getting value and communication on millennials. So I think you said something that really hit it. It's just setting the expectation, and by the way, millennials have massive respect for life balance and people that live a full life. So, if you really make that part of how you set expectations about who you are, wouldn't you say, Kristin, that the millennial population, they're going to just respect you more? They're going to like you more.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a good point. Yeah, we do value work-life balance a lot, and the more that we can get to know you personally and understand, okay, these are, you have a family or whatever you have going on in your life, this is important to you, we're much more likely to respect that if we have that kind of connection. So I think that's a great point to bring up.
Right on. So I toss it back, Todd, to you. Well, first of all, before I toss it back to you, Todd, there's a number of folks in the audience. We had to mute over half of you because you were creating some type of feedback loop. Could have been, something with your monitor. So you can raise your hand. There is a little icon in the GoToWebinar control panel. If you either want to, one, ask a question, or two, just provide a comment, provide some inspiration. Raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Todd, I'm going to throw it back to you, and then let's see here. I am going to call on, I'm not going to warn who I'm going to call on. Although, Ryan, you're not going to get off this call without some leadership and a little more conversation. But, Todd, you're up, my brother.
It's funny because everyone keeps talking about it. Bill, a couple of you guys have mentioned it. I loved it that when Darren pointed out that word digiphrenia by some guy named Douglas Rushkoff, where he said it's digitally induced mental chaos. And it's interesting as I've started coaching more and more loan officers that seems to be like they're just overwhelmed, right? I think that's besides all the slides that Dave's running you through now, where kind of Darren points out those obvious things, about people getting run over by cars, walking more than by texting, which is funny because I've been in New York for over 2 months this summer, and it's crazy watching people in New York walking down the street literally and almost getting run over by the bus. There's the digiphrenia slide. But I don't know about the rest of you, but I think that's something that's a pretty common common feeling where everyone is overwhelmed. And as Chris was talking about creating this space, you do need to create space to think. Do any of you on the call just actually have time in your day to think and be quiet, or are you guys just all running from dusk till dawn?
Raise your hands and speak out. Phil Hughes, you raised your hand and you're unmuted. What do you have to say, my friend?
Yeah, I'm here not responding to that. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay.
Excellent. I just wanted to say this is my first time participating. I missed the first session, so I'm scrambling fast to catch up. The one thing I thought of I've actually never done with a customer or client is to suggest to them that I am willing to be reached on the weekend if they have something that they think will bother them if they don't have it answered prior to Monday, but then also just have a little bit of discussion about how I prefer to have the weekend for my family and my friends unless there's something they really need, and then I will be available. I just think have that straight up conversation with them.
Yeah, I think if you do it right, most will really respect it. Hey, Bill Hart, or Todd, either one of you, and anybody who wants to jump on this, what does doing it right sound like? You know, just this, because I think, you know, there's some folks who just kind of naturally do that right. They can set expectations, create boundaries. Some people aren't as comfortable with it, just like some people aren't as comfortable using no as often as they do. You know, saying no. You know, to be super successful, you got to say a lot of no's. Anybody want to provide some leadership on, you know, how to do it right when it's kind of setting boundaries, saying no, and positioning yourself that family and life balance is a priority? Who wants to tackle that?
I think what we just heard, this is Bill, I think what we just heard is a great way to frame that. Funny thing in coaching sessions is that after 13 years of doing this, somebody will ask me a question like you just asked me, and then I'll roll something out, and they'll say, could you say that again? And generally I'll say, no, I don't think I can. So, you know, I'm not going to shoot for perfection here, but I believe that the keys are what we just heard there. I think that if you say, and you've got to be scripted around this, right, so that it's something that you can roll off your tongue at the right moment, set the expectation, and I believe that you start with the sentence, in order to serve you best, right? In order to serve you best, what I've discovered in my business is that I need to be 100% present with you so that I can bring you my best and the most value. In order to do that, just like you in your life, I've got to have time to be with my family, be present with them, to work out, to worship if that's important to you, to just, you know, have some downtime. And I think if you frame it that way and say, but we do have a system in place, so if there is something that needs to escalate quickly, here's what I would ask you to do. And whatever that is, right? If it's a text to an LOA or a right hand or an executive assistant, that person runs the triage on it like, okay, you know what, I can solve that. Here's the situation. Yep, here's the update. Let me send that to you. I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it probably doesn't need to get to you, but I believe the bigger issue is just set the expectation that, like them, and you're assuming, of course, that they're going to understand this, and most people will, like them, you need balance in your life so that when you're with them, you can be fully present. Here's the subtext. If you're dealing with somebody in the mortgage industry who's available to you 24/7, 365, how much of them are you really getting? Are you getting like 63% all the time? I'm not so sure that's the trade-off that they would want.
Love it. First of all, that scripting was just fantastic, Bill. I don't know if anybody wrote, you know, as fast as Bill was talking, but there was a sentence or two, you know, in order to serve you best, I need to be my best. In order to be, you know, I didn't write it all down. I'm going to re-listen to the call. Reminder to everyone, I do record these. It will be posted, so you go back and listen to it. If anybody does write down Bill's script, or anybody comes up with some scripting on how to create boundaries, please share that in the Facebook private group, because I do think that that could be just a massive game changer for anybody and everybody on this call, if we learn how to set better expectations with the people that we serve, and then if we can learn to control our distractions and be productive. That's what the first session was all about. What I would like to do within 5 minutes is transition to preparing for next week. So Todd, if you could, within the next 5 minutes, kind of set the table for what next week has to hold, given that you've been through it. And let's remind everybody around how to go through these sessions and get the most value. So we do have 6 more minutes around this topic. Does anyone else want to share? You know, does anybody else have some scripting around how you set expectations with your clients? Anyone?
Hi, this is Sean Zalmanoff.
How you doing? Thanks for jumping in.
Good, good. So what we do is on Tuesdays, my guys have a pipeline meeting with their processor, and then on Tuesday afternoons, they're asking for anything from their clients that haven't been delivered to the processor. And then, like somebody else was mentioning on those Thursday phone calls, not only if the client hasn't gotten the information in addition to talking to the realtor and updating them on the files, we're getting them on the client, as well as asking who they're getting in the car to be pre-approved that weekend, because we don't want calls on Friday evenings and Saturdays. So we're helping them plan their weekend and make sure that we can take care of it on Thursdays and Fridays and not have to deal with those calls on the weekend either.
Love it. Thanks for jumping in. Any comments, questions for Sean, or just around the topic, how you're approaching this topic that we're having right now? Anyone?
So I can say, you know, we definitely are hearing some common themes here, right? I mean, I think that there's probably some on this call who are like, holy smokes, right? It's just me. I don't have a team. You know, I've never had that script before. How am I going to do it? And then you've also got people on this call who have large teams and are well-oiled machines and have people in place to do it. So regardless of where you're at, listen to those common themes, right? You've got people who brought up their scripts, right? Here's how I'm going to set those expectations, and that's something I say all the time, right? You have to set the right expectations, you know, in order to have a great client experience. And then, you know, the script typically doesn't come out exactly the same every time, but it comes out pretty close. And I think, you know, all of those were authentic scripts, right? If you're telling someone, you know, people do business with you. I mean, we all know that, right? They're not doing business with XYZ mortgage company. They're doing business with you or your team, but really it's you. And so if you're giving them the authentic reasons why you've set this system up and why you're available when you're available. I mean, the moment that I told people early on that I got the mortgage business and I was transitioning from being a stay-at-home dad while I was getting my MBA at night, and I told people, hey, if you call me after 2:30, there'll probably be screaming kids in my car because I'm picking up my kids from school. And people loved that about me. It was actually really one of the things that attracted people because I was transparent. So as you guys are thinking through, you know, what you're listening to today, I mean, there's been great examples by multiple people of scripting that they're using, of boundaries that they're setting, and ways that they're doing it. And there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, we all started as one person and we had to create these systems that ourselves, and then a lot of people have evolved to having teams of people who can now do those scripts and do it for them. But just spending a little bit of time as you go through and same productivity will definitely get you there. You know, I loved it. Any other feedback, Bill or Dave?
Yeah, well,
or anyone else for that matter?
Yeah, I just noticed that we had Cindy Ertman join us. Cindy, I don't know if you're unmuted. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't know how much of the conversation you've been involved in, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic. Cindy, if you're muted, we can't hear you, but feel free to jump in if you can hear us.
I show unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are. We can hear you now.
Perfect. Hi, I've been on most of the call. Great call, actually, and this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and I loved what you just said, Todd, about transparency. I find with mortgage originators, because I'm coaching many of them right now, the biggest challenge is for people to actually just tell the truth and be honest with what is. And I mean, I've learned in my life and my business that to tell the truth and set expectations is absolutely, completely key. And when probably 5 years ago, I had coached with Building Champions and Daniel Harkavy, and I just got really intentional about how I led my life and my business. And people say to me all the time now, I have no idea how you do all the things you do, and it's a matter of setting priorities, letting people know, you know, how my day is scheduled. And I find that people, as long as they know and you're clear, they'll follow your plan. I tell people how I do business. Let me tell you a little bit about our team and what you can expect in working with us. So I have found for me that it's really about getting clear about managing our business and not having us, you know, the business manage us. And people, I think, earlier in their careers get into fear mode, that people will leave them and they won't do as much business if they're not available 24/7. I know for me, because I'm like, you know, Bill mentioned FOMO, I am the queen of fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on anything. But I realized for me, I have to have like a digital curfew. I talked to a lot of my clients about that. I was just on the phone with a client who checks her email every night at 4 a.m. and her body is now programmed to wake up every morning at 4 a.m., check her email, respond to people, and she goes back to bed. And it's sad to think that we've created that sort of dynamic in our business because it's not reasonable, it's not healthy. I know, you know, technically social media, the best times to post are like 7 in the morning, 3 p.m., and 7 at night. So if I'm going to check social media, those are typically the times that I'll pop on to do a post if it works with my schedule. I'm doing a presentation coming up on choice mastery, and as we've got the ability to choose how we work and how to educate our clients on the best way to work with us, and what you talked about earlier is people respect that. I found that I get so much more business in being present with people, and presence comes from making intentional choices about how we show up. And the business has become so much easier. I think relationships have come easier by making choices to leave the digital world behind for periods, blocks of time, you know, and show up and be really present with those, whether it be our team, whether it be, you know, out to lunch with a realtor, whether it be someone standing right in front of me that has a question or a challenge. And it's one of the greatest gifts I've given myself is to kind of run my business intentionally. So I love this call and the topic, and the shares from everybody has been awesome.
So first of all, Cindy, thanks for jumping on. Cindy is just a great leader in the industry, friend of myself personally. We've done a lot of life together. So Cindy, thanks for being here.
Absolutely awesome.
So, you know, Todd, let's plan on you wrap it up in the last 5 minutes. I want to try to vet out one more thought that just kind of hit my mind as we go through this. How do we cleanse ourselves and get control of the technology instead of the technology control us? So we've talked about what I would call like tactics, you know, the 20-minute jam session, the digital curfew. You know, these are like strategies and tactics. And I'll let whoever wants to answer this. What about this cleanse? You know, like let's face it, you know, if you want to reduce how much you're drinking, you know, you got to stop drinking for a week or two. Or, you know, there's just something you need to do if you want to start anew tomorrow with technology, you know, and I know Darren has some thoughts on this, and he's probably got more thoughts in the sessions to come. But anything anyone wants to share right now, like if we really, like today, we want to take action, you know, any recommendations from anyone on the call around how to just reprogram yourself to get control at a period of time in which we might want to, you know, purge technology? Any ideas or thoughts?
Dave, I would say this, and I didn't do it intentionally, right? This was so I recommend everybody go to Kauai and renew your vows, and that's a really good way to do it. But if you can't do that, there's something between the stimulus and the response, right, that worked for me there. I was, you know, wearing shorts and flip-flops every day, and, you know, I mean, we all know what those vacations are like. It's much easier to do it in that setting. What I would say is create some margin. And for some of you, that might mean, you know, I'm going to grab a mountain bike and ride up into the hills, but I'm going to discipline myself not to be looking at my phone. For goodness sakes, I've seen people doing this on bikes. Talk about that being a bad practice. But get away. Go to the beach. Go to the mountains. Go for a hike. Just, I would say, try and create some interruption between the stimulus and the response, because there really is brain science on this, you guys. I know it because I'm telling you, it's real for me. That dopamine rush is just, they're little doses. And so for me, where it started when I got back is, okay, the phone is just, I can't even see it in my car because I used to check it at red lights. So that's what I would start there. Like if you've got a trip coming up, take advantage of the trip. But if you don't, create some space between the stimulus and the response.
Awesome. So first of all, I want to thank everybody. You know, we've got a big group on today's call. Todd is going to set the stage for the week to come. I have two asks before I hand it off to Todd to wrap up today's call. First and foremost, I ask you to engage on this Facebook private group. You know, we've had some engagement. The more we can engage on this, you know, whether it's sharing a success that one of us has had throughout the week, a takeaway that we had, you know, please engage and participate in this private group that we've set up for everyone. Also, I am in the middle of preparing for my next call with Darren on September 7th, and I want to ask him 8 questions, but I want to make sure that the 8 questions that I ask him on that next call, because it's not going to be a repeat of what we did last time, where it's this structured conversation. It's going to be a, hey, we're creating Mortgage Coach Insane Productivity for the mortgage industry. You know, this is Mortgage Coach and Darren Hardy's gift to the mortgage industry. And so we're creating videos that are going to be, you know, helpful for you. You know, the contributors on this call, Todd, Bill, Kristin, David Gallegos, Cindy Ertman, and a few folks that aren't on the call, they're going to create videos that help you as a mortgage professional take more action, get more value from this program. So what I would like everybody to do is, if I could ask Todd one, or not Todd, if I could ask Darren one question, what would it be? And if you had a pain or a challenge that was your biggest one, what is it? And, I don't have time to, talk about that in today's call, but, please share that on the Facebook page. If you want to be private about it and you just don't want to do a public share, please, you can email me at dave@mortgagecoach, or you can private message me through Facebook. But I would encourage you, post something public. What is your biggest challenge, and what is a question that you'd like me to ask Darren in that next call? So with that said, Todd, I'm going to hand it off to you to prepare us all for next week. Anything you want to have us do to wrap up from last week, great, but let's really focus on what do we need to do to crush it this coming week.
Perfect. Awesome. So, I agree with Dave. Great call. I'm glad we have more people participating, and certainly, hopefully, as we continue through the next few weeks, we'll get more of you to speak up. I would do what Dave just said. I would review last week, Module 1, one more time for those of you who already done it. If you haven't done Module 1 yet, then obviously you get to start fresh. But I would definitely review it and make sure that you're taking notes and writing down your key takeaways. I've got I use Evernote, and I went through my Evernote notes from when I took it 2 years ago, and when I did it again, and then just a couple weeks ago in prepping for this. But I would say is take a look at that, and then look at what you've got. I've seen in the question section, like Anna, she's got time set up where she's doing time blocking, right? So if you guys have a time block, I would say, make sure you're doing that and time block out these next 90 days so that you can ensure success. I love what Bill said when he's driving his car, he can't even reach his phone, right? When I did On Time, I used to zip my phone in my backpack so that it didn't distract me. It made my wife super mad at me, but nonetheless, she learned to love it as much as I did. The great news about next module number 2, is that Darren actually starts talking into solutions. And so as I was reading through my notes, I love one of my quote that I highlighted in here. I had 15 different points I took away from Module 2, but one of them was life will organize around the standards you set for yourself. And so I think as you review Module 1 or do Module 1 and you realize that you are overwhelmed, you may be addicted, or maybe you're like Dave and you're one of the people who is not, who's not. But start looking. Just know that the solutions are coming. The beautiful thing that Darren does is he sets you up to be the most productive human you can be. And Dave Savage can tell you, Dave Gallegos can tell you, and I can tell you because we spent time around Darren. I mean, the dude is a machine, and none of us will ever be as much of a machine as he will be. But nonetheless, we can all get pretty close. And so I think you guys are all on that path. I think you're all on that path to get there. And I would just be going through, maybe even re-listen to this call, write down a couple of the scripts that you heard from the participants. And again, I love what Bill just said. Where can you create some margin, right? I mean, margin is something that we need. You heard Cindy talking about it, right? Choice mastery, right? Mastering your choices. And so as you start hearing these other people on the call who are successful and have had success in different ways, right? Everyone on the call is successful, but certainly we've all done it differently. We've all gotten to the same place that we're at. We all have room to grow. And so I would just continue to think through, what are those personal takeaways? And then one thing at some point we probably should introduce is a little bit of accountability, right? We have some accountability in this group. Certainly if there's someone that you know on this call that you can reach out to, because at some point you're going to need to circle around and you're going to have to set these new boundaries that you're going to set for yourself, and you're going to need someone to help you be accountable for that. So I don't know, Dave, maybe you can come up with some great way to do that. My new favorite saying now is going to be FOMO. I like that. Bill, thanks for that. I'm gonna watch that video again. And again, for me, the biggest reason I know I was an addict is because I went to Italy for 3 weeks, and I had a business partner I could leave my business behind with, and I actually turned off my cell phone and I left it on the kitchen table. But the weirdest thing was, and I don't know if anyone else has ever had this, but it was amazing how many days I was walking down the street and I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket, even though I didn't have a phone in my pocket. So that's how I knew I was addicted. So when it says, when Dave Savage just said, you cleanse for it, right? I cleansed. I stayed off of social media. I did all of that. And it was super hard. So I would also love, maybe as we keep going through this, to hear from some of you on if you've ever done that and if you had the same challenge that I had. But we hit the end of our time, Dave. What else would you like to add?
Well, as we close it out, I want to remind everybody that we're all connected. going through the same program at the same time, do reach out to each other. And I do urge you to create some accountability partners. You know, if you have a professional coach, make sure your professional coach knows that you're going through this and has some accountability rhythms with you. If you do not have a professional coach, get an accountability partner around this project. Either reach out to someone who's part of this group or reach out to someone that you just think you trust, you'd be honest with, and could help you hold yourself accountable for the next 90 days to make change. You know, Darren said it really well, and he said it from the bottom of his heart as he kicked off the first session. You're here to become your best authentic self. You're here to make change. And I'm doing this mastermind event to make, you know, to add even more value to that. You know, we've got some the folks that are on this call from a participant standpoint, you know, Danny or Annie, one of the most successful mortgage professionals in the business. I'm not going to read off all the names, but there's just a lot of really, you know, successful people on this call. The collaborators, Bill Hart, Cindy Ertman, David Gallegos, Kristin Messerli, Todd Bookspan. There's just a lot of superpowers on this call. Let's make the most of this. So take care, everybody. I will post the recording if you want to re-listen to it. Remember to re-listen to last week's, listen to next week's, and come to, you know, next Friday's call with ideas to talk about and questions for the audience. With that said, we are going to wrap this call, and I'm grateful for everyone who showed up. Take care, everybody.